My name is Meklit Kibret, and I'm a musician, and I work in arts administrator. I'm an arts administrator. I work in education and community engagement. So I was born in Kenya. My parents fled Ethiopia as refugees, so they were in Kenya for a couple of years. I was born there, and then when I was a year and a half, we were granted refugee status, and we went to New Zealand.
Okay.
So yeah, we lived in New Zealand I lived there till I was about 9, and then I think mainly my dad. I think he wanted to live in a bigger place, a place with more opportunity, more work opportunity, a bit more life. No shade to Aotearoa, it's beautiful, but yeah. So we ended up in Sydney.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, we first came here on a holiday, to just suss out Australia.
Yeah.
Sydney. We had family, friends, cousin, uncle, auntie, who my parents met in Kenya.
Okay.
And they remained in contact the whole time, and so we came and stayed with them in Petersham.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, I'd never gone on an overseas. It was the first country that I remember going overseas to. I don't remember Kenya, but I came here when I was about 8 for a couple months or something, maybe a month. I loved it. I mean, but that was a really different experience because it was just a holiday. I think coming back, I mean, I was excited to come back to Australia. I think it was hard though, to leave my friends and stuff and all that I knew in New Zealand. But yeah, I think I was really lucky. One of my early memories of moving here was just walking into my primary school with Dad, being like, I gotta go to school somewhere. So just them signing me up to this school. Yeah, and everyone was really friendly.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we could get into it. Obviously, there was
yeah, we can.
Yeah. But I my kind of earliest memories of here are really positive, I think. Yeah.
So, okay, then tell me how you grew up then. How you grew up surrounding, where did you settle first?
So we're in Dulwich.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is, so it's different then to how it is now.
Okay.
Yeah, it was cool. There was, I guess, when I was in Aotearoa, most of my friends were Pacific Islanders, the area that I grew up in. A few friends from China. My best friend was from China when I was a kid. I think the thing that stood out to me when I came here was how multicultural it was. I was meeting people from Greece, from Turkey, from Egypt, people from cultures I'd never met or really knew too much about.
Okay.
Which was really cool. Well, it was kind of a mixed bag because in one way, there were all these, I was being exposed to all these different cultures, and my friends were from Indonesia, China, Greece, Turkey, Egypt, Lebanon. And I mean, Dulwich was a different place then. It wasn't as bougie as it is now. And yeah, it was really nice at the same time. We were going to an Ethiopian church in Regent's Park. So, I mean, when I was in New Zealand, there was a pretty tight Ethiopian community. It was small, but it existed. So that was nice to continue having those connections and, going out to Regent's Park each Sunday for church. And I think it was probably important for my parents while they were settling as well. They've always been pretty independent, do their own thing, but I think it was nice for them while they were settling. I definitely experienced, I think it was the first time I had knowingly experienced racism though. I remember this girl who later turned out to be my best friend.
Okay, that's good.
I remember her teasing me because, her skin. She was like, oh, you I just remember being in my class, in my year 3 class, and she didn't like me. Like, I'd made friends with her friends, and I don't know what it was. We're kids. We don't know how to fucking deal with our feelings. So you're like, I'm going to pick this thing that makes them feel othered. I just remember being in class and them being like, your skin's the color of manure, blah, blah, blah. And I just like sat there and cried. My primary school teacher's lap, just crying and being like, I don't understand. And there were kids, you know, who were also brown or had, you know, connections to being black and stuff. And it's like, this is really weird. Like, you know, and I felt really sad about it. But actually, you know, there was like a fair bit of bullying and people. I remember one time my mum made me, I was like going through a big hot chips phase.
Okay.
And she packed in like you know, like those like foil bags that when you buy a chicken or something, that comes in.
Yeah.
She'd put chips in there, and I took it to school, but instead of tomato sauce, she gave me oase.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah. And then, you know, I'm sitting there eating my chips and oase.
Yeah.
And one of the girls was like, what the fuck is that? What are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, it's my food.
Yeah.
Or, you know, she'd pack me fur or something like that. And, you know, people would be like, that's weird. What are those things? But I think, like, you know, and you kind of, you look back and you think, as you get older and you kind of understand things more, you kind of look back at the way that certain teachers talk to you or people approach you or whatever. And you're like, oh, there was probably something a bit off about that. But generally, like, primary school was good. I think I definitely noticed it in high school. Again, like, I went to a pretty, like, liberal school. Everyone free to kind of, well, not everyone, but I think it was definitely a much more open school than a lot of other people's experiences were. Yeah, I mean, so people just say shit. You know, I think like there's always like, you know, people being like, oh, your hair looks like pubes. Like, thanks for that, mate. Or your hair looks like worms when you have it in braids, or, you know, just like all that low-hanging fruit. Or people like putting on an African American accent and being like pretending, like, you know, I'm quite animated when I speak sometimes. You know, just people just like stereotyping, and, you know, or people being like, I remember one time I left my school bag in front of the library door and we weren't meant to, and then the teacher was like, you now have to do bag duty and you have to pick up all the bags. So, and I was like, I'm not doing that. She was like, she wanted to refer me to the principal or whatever, and she was like, what's your name? And I was like, Meklit. And she's like, no, what's your real name? And I was like, what do you mean, what's my real name? She's like, how do you spell it? And then I just like walked away. I was like, I'm not doing this. Get fucked. But, you know, I can talk for ages, but there's just like little things. Yeah. I definitely didn't talk to my parents about it, especially, you know, as a teenager. I think that was a slightly tumultuous time in my relationship with my parents. And, you know, they're dealing with their own grown folk shit as, you know, immigrants and the things that they have to deal with at that level and trying to support a family and all of those things. I don't really think I like processed a lot of that stuff. I kind of just, you know, I'd get angry about it, frustrated about it, but I didn't really have, you know, like, I'm grateful, like, my best mate is Egyptian, and, you know, she's got brown skin, and so we always had, and we went to primary school together and high school together, so I think we always had an understanding of like what our values are, how our families operated and stuff. So although I don't think we fully understood what was happening, I feel like we had each other, like, and so we could express frustration or be upset about something, not fully get why or what was happening. And it's also that kind of strange thing where it's like you're a kid and a lot of the you know, when you have an adult talk to you in a particular way, or treating you because of a bias that they have, or prejudice that they have, you know, I don't know, you're kind of just like, oh, well, I'm a kid and they're an adult. And like, I mean, I'm really stubborn, and I have a very strong sense of what's right and what's wrong. But I think like the conversations and the vocabulary that we have now is so far advanced to what was then, you know, like 18 years ago or whatever. It's like, I mean, obviously there are people who are like ahead of the game and knew what was going on, but it wasn't as talked about in younger communities. And also, like, you know, my school, I think there was me and one other black person in my year, and maybe even in my school for a little while. So I didn't really have anyone to kind of talk to. And by that point, by the time I was in high school, I stopped going to church. So I wasn't really connecting with the Habesha community either. Yeah. So I think I kind of just cocked it on the chin and then dealt with it later. When I was like in my last year of school, I actually, before, probably when I was in year 11, I started singing backing vocals for a Zimbabwean musician. And in that I met the bass player, who we became really good friends, and he was kind of around the Sydney jazz scene. And yeah, he would take me to gigs and stuff. And so I met a bunch of people who were either just like finished studying at the con or wherever they studied, or were just working musicians. And so I kind of just started to go. And I think probably in year 11, I also decided that I really enjoyed singing jazz. So I kind of started doing, my first gig was like at Martini Cafe on South King Street. And it was like $50 to sing for 3 hours, but they paid, you know, I could drink as much as I wanted. So that was good with me. And it was cute. Like, that was like every Wednesday, and my friends would come. And yeah, I think just from that, I started meeting more musicians, and there'd be a few little jam nights and stuff. And there was a venue called the Mac, which had music from like Wednesday to Sunday, and it was free. And yeah, so I just kind of started doing that. And then when I went to Ethiopia for the first time when I was 17 at the end of year 11. And I went by myself, and I went for like maybe 6 weeks or something. And I came back to Australia, and I was like, fuck Australia. The way we do everything here, like, this isn't living, whatever. Like, you know, I just wanted to go back to Ethiopia. And
tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Why was it different?
Because, you know, I'd grown up, you know, like just hearing about this place, Ethiopia, my family, everybody, and so many stories. And, you know, my parents are close with their family, especially my father's really close to his family, his mom. And, you know, I genuinely think, you know, I mean, I think with most people, like, if it were a viable option, they would stay there. Why would you leave? Why would you leave your home? You know, your family is there, your culture, your language, everything. Like, why would you want to come here again? Like, when everything is there. Well, most things are there. And I was particularly drawn to my grandfather, who, I don't know, I don't really know what it is, but like, he just seemed so, I guess like he was old, but kind of just seemed like somebody from like a different time, like Lela Zaman, like he just, and he really interested me because he was very like, he just had all these stories. He was really proper, very deeply Christian man, and you know, but he came from what is now known like Eritrea, came to Addis Ababa when he was 17, was in the military, just had this life, this long life. And I was just really curious to meet him and also to know my parents more. I wanted to know, like, where did you come from? Where did you live? Like, this is the house you grew up in. These are the people, you know, there's obviously so many people who are still there from their childhoods, who still live in the same street even. So yeah, I really wanted to know that. And I think also growing up here, there definitely was like a sense of loneliness, being like most of my family, like I think I always looked at people who'd grown up here and they had their grandparents, their cousins, everyone here, and I was like, I have that, just not here. And I never really understood when people were like, I've got to go see my grandma, I've got to do this. And look, granted, people have their own fucked up relationships with their families, and that's cool, but I was like, oh my goodness, if I had that here, I would be there every day. So yeah, I just was like, I've got to go, I've got to meet my granddad. I've got to meet everyone, but I've got to meet Abboy, and I've got to just see where I'm from. And I went, and you know, I met my cousin, who were 2 months apart exactly, and her mom and my mom were sisters. Her mother, Haini, was my mom's little sister. She died when we were 3. But yeah, you know, I always wanted a sister. She was the closest thing that I had to it. And we'd try and talk on the phone when I was young, but I couldn't speak Amharic very well then. And you know, I'd end up just crying in frustration because I was like, I want to talk to you, but we don't understand each other. She could speak English, she could speak Italian and Amharic. And I could speak English. Yeah, so that was also really fun, like just live at my granddad's house and be with her and just run around Addis Ababa. And I met one of my brothers for the first time as well. So obviously that was a big thing as well. Yeah, so I just think just going and being like, holy shit, I have this whole family and all these people who love me. They don't even know me, like they've never met me, but you know, and just the ties to, yeah, just being like, oh wow, like this is my family. Yeah. And so then, you know, just after like 6 weeks and just like speak, obviously look, by that point, like I could speak Amharic, and it had improved a lot. Being there, I think just being like, wow, like everywhere I go, people look like me. I'm speaking Amharic, I'm eating injera. I don't have to explain things. Like, you know, obviously I'm still different because I've grown up in New Zealand and Australia, but still, like, at my core, I am Ethiopian. And yeah, it was just so nice to, like, everywhere you go, it's just like people are alive and people connected to one another. People talk to you in the street, like the, you know, going in the Hizb taxi, it's loud and there's chaos, and I really liked that. Yeah, so when I came back, and everything was so orderly here.
Yeah.
You know, and like there's kind of no room. Well, sometimes it feels like there's no room for improvisation. Like if something, everything has to go a particular way, and I just and then it's obviously just really white in the inner west as well. I kind of had like culture shock coming back, being like, whoa. Yeah, so then I kind of was like, I don't really care about anything here anymore. I wanted to leave school, but I was like, fuck it. I've seen life now. I've been to Ethiopia.
All right. So you're coming back, you finished your high school, and you started, did you do uni or did you continue?
No, so that was part of the thing, is because of the Australian immigration policy.
Okay.
So we moved here in 2002.
Okay.
Up until 2001, any New Zealand citizen who moved here and lived here for a particular amount of time could apply for citizenship. But they changed that policy. So we came here in 2002, and so the avenue for citizenship would have been my father, who's a lawyer, applying as a skilled migrant for permanent residency and getting citizenship. However, if you have a disability, you can't apply as a skilled migrant. So my dad's fully blind. So because he's blind, even though he's a lawyer, they wouldn't take him as a skilled migrant.
Okay.
Surprise, guys. And so, and my mom's childcare educator, that's not counted as a skilled migrant. So yeah, so we just weren't citizens, and at the point that I finished high school, I couldn't get HECS. So I would have had to pay for uni up front. And although I didn't have to pay international fees, it's still a lot of money.
Yes,
And if you don't have it, you don't have it.
Yeah.
And there wasn't anything I was particularly set on studying. So I was like, well, fuck, why waste my time paying, doing something that I don't really know about? I don't even know myself. Like, I've just been at school like this whole time. And you want me to leave school and then jump into a degree when I'm literally still a kid.
And be in debt.
And then be in debt.
Yeah.
For who? For what?
Yeah.
So that was also partly why I was like, who cares then? I don't need, like, you know, who cares about my grade? Like, power to the people who wanted that and took that path and wanted to study, but it just didn't seem like an option for me at the time. So I just was working and gigging. I just worked hospo. I worked in cafes. I can't even remember I was nannying.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just doing everything.
What was the other people's reactions to you in terms of like people who've been working in gigs?
Yeah.
And I would guess that normally the music industry, quote unquote, would be more accepting of different personalities.
Yeah.
Unless and otherwise it's in like it's for big things.
Yeah.
But what was it like? Like,
I think it's interesting, like, you know, when I was younger, I don't think I think, like, yeah, because it's music, you get lots of people from lots of different cultural backgrounds, walks of life, all of that. I think I felt pretty accepted. I think though there was always it's not like people didn't make comments about me being black or African or whatever, you know, like there's like throwaway comments or, you know, that people think is funny. It's like they don't think that they're being racist or inappropriate or whatever.
Yeah.
But, you know, they make jokes, and of course people just going around like the N-word or, you know, like, and thinking it's funny, or then also like a lot of, you know, you're a young woman who is, you know, in a pretty like male dominated, at least in Sydney, and like, you know, the jazz scene, or in, you know, yeah, like a lot of things, like a lot of men around, and so you're a young woman around that, and so, you know, that comes with its own things. And then I think definitely there's like a lot of like fetishization, like people like, you know, people being like creepy and like thinking they're being flattering by mentioning your skin or whatever, you know, that kind of stuff. And yeah, that's different. I mean, I'm sure that I know that still exists, but again, you're still young and fresh in the world. And yeah, I actually think I probably noticed that I'm more aware of how people treat me or talk to me now than I was then. Yeah. But at the same time, you know, through the music industry, I've met so many other POC, you know, and made a lot of really good friends. And yeah, of course, like we talk about how fucked it all is. Yeah. 100%, I felt like I needed to assimilate for a while, you know, like especially fresh out of school, even in high school. It's just like, you know, like people make a racist comment and you laugh along with it, or you let them call you something cooked, or, you know, like because you're like, oh, this is some form of acceptance, you know, and you don't realize that it's how much damage I guess it's doing to me in hindsight. And you're like, oh, I didn't like that, or you know, that person's intention wasn't good. Yeah, so I definitely, whether it was like, you know, you try and assimilate in the way that you look, the way you style your hair, the clothes you wear, the way you talk, all that shit. And then, but I think like those two sides, you know, if it's two, however many like parts of yourself and culture, I think they can coexist. I think it's hard. Sometimes it's definitely an internal struggle.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, it's like I grew up here. I grew up in New Zealand. Like there's things that, you know, even when you listen to me speak sometimes or whatever, like if you didn't look at me, you'd be like, oh, this fucking true blue, whatever.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, I'm also very connected to my Ethiopian side, and you know, unfortunately, like any time somebody sees me, I mean, not any time, a lot of the time, you know, somebody were to see me, or people are surprised, like if they hear me speak, or there's the where are you from, or whatever, it's like, you know, people, you can't change. It's like, yeah, I look Ethiopian. And you know, I wouldn't change that for the world. I'm very happy with that, and yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's tough one. I mean, something I think about a lot. And I mean, I don't even know if I necessarily want to have kids, but I think about it for like my nieces and nephews, you know, any like young people around me, particularly young POC. Yeah, I definitely I guess I want them to know their culture, and I want them to celebrate that, and I don't want them to ever feel like they have to be ashamed or, you know, not speak their language and to just so they can fit in. Or, yeah, I definitely, you know, I do think it's like if I have kids, they're having Ethiopian names. I don't care.
Oh yeah.
I mean, look, we can compromise depending on where. Like, if my baby daddy was white, like Western English or whatever, hell no, they're not being called John or whatever. Sorry, Johns. But if they're definitely gonna have some sort of name. Like I got stuck with Meklit, so they can have a name, a different name. And you know, God willing, like, you know, if my parents are around at that time, they'd spend a lot of time with my parents. You know, I want them to speak the language. I want them to know how to cook, you know, Ethiopian food. I want them to know how to skista. I would just want them to know everything, you know? Not to like know, but I want them to be exposed to it. Obviously, it's their choice. But at the same time, you know, I think a lot of, like, I speak to a lot of friends who've grown up and they've had family from whatever, like, they're from a different, they're not Australian, they're like white Australian. And, you know, a lot of them they stopped speaking their language because they didn't want to be different. And they have so many regrets now, like, shit, I wish I could speak this language. And so I guess I would, if I had kids, I would be like, I mean, I'd have to think about how I want to do it, but I just like, I really don't want them to not connect with their culture or be like lose out, like not know how to speak the language, not know anything because they feel like they can't do it because they won't fit in, they won't be accepted. And I guess that's also, you know, it's partially, it's like empowering my kids or the young people around me to be like, actually knowing your culture is sick, it's, you know, but also, you know, and making sure that they feel strong enough to have those conversations. But it's also like, it's a societal issue, like they shouldn't have to shoulder all of that, like, you know. So whether it's like having conversations with their teachers or the other adults in their lives or whatever it is, because at the end of the day, they're young people and they're trying to figure out. I mean, everyone's always trying to figure things out, but I think we also have, as adults, a responsibility to the young people.
Okay.
Yeah. My version of being Ethiopian is different to somebody who grew up in Ethiopia, for instance. Like, and that's something like I got a lot of that growing up here. It's like, oh, you're so white. And it's like, I have a different view of things. Like, I'm still Ethiopian though, And so I think we kind of just need to be open to the many different iterations, versions of being something.
Yeah.
There's not just one way to do it. I'm me, you're you.
Yeah.
I'm Ethiopian, you're Ethiopian. But our experiences and things that we do are different. And I think it's important for us as Ethiopians, or us as people with different cultural backgrounds or whatever, to remember there's like no one way to do it. Even though I guess it's interesting though, because then you have a lot of Western society and people who just paint you all with the same brush, paint us all, and they think there's just one version of us.
Yeah.
And then we're also doing that to ourselves. So actually, like, we need to figure this out amongst ourselves and be, confident and strong in that, us being like, there's heaps of different versions and we need to actually show that, because otherwise, I mean, it's not our fault that people see us a particular way, but we can be.
Do you feel like the news in Australia specifically represents you or your community?
Absolutely not. No. I mean, it's like, if they even mention anything, which is crazy to me. It's like Ethiopia is the second most populated country in Africa. It's, the African Union is there. Like, all these things, like, you don't really hear about it. Shit, like, I've had people hear me like, are you really from Ethiopia? I thought it was a made-up place like Atlantis. Okay.
Really?
Legit. And it's like, people just don't know. And, I don't think it really supports their agenda, to talk about what's going on in Ethiopia or anywhere. That's not, like, we're seeing it right now. Like, the way things are reported on the very one-sided.
Palestine.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know. I think a lot of news outlets have lost a lot of credibility. I mean, I kind of all I had seen was like, humanitarian crisis. This million people are starving, internally displaced people, blah blah blah. But like, no actual discussion about like the nuances of what's going on there and why it's happening and the history of it all. And it's a very like watered down version of it, and I don't necessarily. I mean, to be honest, like, I don't really pay attention to a lot of those media outlets anymore. It's more like how I found out what was going on is like speaking to my parents about it, or speaking to my family back in Ethiopia about it, or again, like social media, which obviously that was shut off for a long time in Ethiopia. So then there was that kind of period of not knowing, and then only having like the Western media version of it. And then, just be like, shit, I have no idea what's going on. I mean, let's talk about right now.
Yeah.
Like the genocide in Palestine. You look at all the news and, I mean, we've all, those of us who are in the same, we're thinking the same way about it. It's like, all the language that is used, the conflict, you know, same conflict instead of genocide, you know, people dying of hunger, like instead of starvation as, you know, tactic of genocide, like all of that kind of stuff, like, you know, we've just witnessed for the last 5 months, like, and, you know, again, like all these, like, all that once upon a time credible news outlets, BBC, CNN, or, you know, the only outlet that I've seen actually, like big media outlet that I've seen even like touch the sides and call it for what it is Al Jazeera. So yeah, and you know, this is people's lives. They're just like playing with people's lives, and there's so much responsibility. The media has so much power, responsibility for how people see things. Yeah, because people, unfortunately, a lot of people are lazy and they're not going to look further, and they're not going to question what's been put in front of them. And they're not going to have conversations with people who are actually directly affected by whatever's going, you know, whatever issue is going on. And so they just take it in, and they just live as if that's gospel, and it's really dangerous and wildly irresponsible of these media outlets. But I don't know, I just feel like it's all kind of just trash. So yeah, obviously that would be, at this point, it's like, I mean, yeah, just the amount of influence that they have and just the damage that they're doing by like just lying or, you know, not reporting on things properly. I think it's a combination of, yeah, obviously, like, people, life is hectic, people are working, they're doing this, they're doing that, like, obviously it takes time to actually try and find information or resources, but really there's kind of no excuse anymore. Like, there's so many people posting things, like whatever kind of social media platform you use, there's so many people talking about things, having conversations, shit. Like, look at all the journalists, like going back to Palestine, for instance, who are literally risking their lives out there, like filming, like live. We're seeing things happen in real time, and people still are like, oh, I don't know, oh, whatever. It's like, you don't want to know, or I understand, like, you know, it's like people who are like, oh, I don't pay attention to the news, I don't vote, I don't whatever. It's like, that's coming from a place of extreme privilege. Like, you know, people are like, oh, I don't care about politics. Well, you should, you know, because we're in a democracy, everyone gets to have a voice. You have a responsibility, even if something, I think Australia and the Western world, it's like, there's really, and this is what something that I found quite confronting coming back from Ethiopia the first time, especially, is like, it's a really individualistic society. Everyone's just thinking about themselves and their, you know, and of course, like, we have to look out for ourselves, but we also have a responsibility for the person next to us. Doesn't matter if you don't know them, they're a person, you know, and their life is just as valuable as my life, and they have their own story and their own everything. Like, why can't we care for that person? And ultimately, if we're all caring for one another, then it's just, we have a happier, better society, you know. And, you know, it does frustrate me. Like, you know, I have friends who I've tried to talk about what's going on, whether it's Palestine or any other social issue, and oh, you know, they're just like, it's just really confronting. It's like, it is confronting. And of course, like, you know, I'm not saying just like look at it consistently and just fall into a fucking depression spiral because you look at it and you're like, the world's fucked. However, I think you owe it to your fellow person to be across what's going on. And, you know, I think sometimes people feel like a sense of helplessness. You know, they see something happen or they hear about bad news, and, you know, we're always hearing about bad news. Or we remember the bad news more than we remember the good news. Or I think people feel kind of a sense of powerlessness, and then so they don't want to know about it because they're like, what can I do anyway? But actually, we can do something. You know, the smallest thing. If everyone just did the smallest thing, it's like it can amount to something. But yeah, I think it's been an interesting time because, you know, I have kind of been re-evaluating some friendships and relationships in my life, like based on how they, not from like a judgmental perspective, but just like, what are my values when it comes to stuff like this? Like, and of course I'm by no means like perfect or anything, but it's just like, I can't just ignore, even if I feel like I can't do anything, I still should know, be aware of what's going on in the world around, because we're all, well, I believe anyway, like we're all connected. The least I can do is at least be aware of like my fellow person's suffering, or I don't know.
Normally, where do you get your news from?
I mean, like an outlet, or I mean, it's a combination of like the news, like a newspaper, or social media, like Instagram. People posted articles, some journalists that I follow, you know, certain pages that are about a particular kind of, you know, there's some pages that are kind of talking about like news that is like from Africa, or news like that has to do with, you know, Indigenous matters, or then news that has to do with like Black culture, Black, you know, African American. Yeah, so it's kind of a mix of things.
Okay. Like two things. First thing is because the perspective of people, for example, in Ethiopia about living abroad is completely different.
Yeah.
But at the same time, and the people who have been here generations, their perspective about immigrants is also completely different. So, like for the person, you know, who wants to immigrate here, or who recently immigrated here, what would you say? And in terms of, do you like any last maybe insights that you would have in terms of being Ethiopian or Australian?
You're moving here. I mean, I think about this a bit because it's like, if it depends, you know, on what you're moving here for or what you're moving from. You know, like I think this is a conversation like sometimes with the older generation, like they're leaving war, fleeing war, or, you know, just horrible circumstances, and anything here, even if there's a bit of racism, this and that, you know, they're like, well, fuck, I'm just glad I'm alive, and, you know, stop complaining. So what, someone called you this or did this, and, you know, that's their experience and perspective, and that's fine. It's hard because there's obviously something really beautiful about being in a place where there's people from all around the world, and, you know, if we are able to share freely our experiences and our cultures and celebrate that, then it's really beautiful. And I would encourage people to, because, you know, people come here with their own prejudices, and people have their own opinions, you know, about people from a different part of their own country, or this or that. Like we all are like that, have that, and can have that. I guess it's kind of like a combination of being, you know, I think on both sides, like just try and be as open as you can, and always assume positive intent, I think. You know, everyone, I don't think people are inherently bad. I think, you know, we're all a product of our upbringing, our society, our circumstance, and I just would encourage like everyone to just like, I know it's hard and there's language barriers and all these things, but just talk to one another, ask questions, don't make assumptions. Like, you don't have all the information, and yeah, like I would just say both sides, whether you're somebody who's immigrated here a long time ago, whether you're someone who's immigrated here new, whether you're somebody who's born and raised here and you know came here as a convict, you know, it's like, I think try and find the thing that connects all of us, you know, what are our values, whether it's, you know, I think all of us, it's like we experience love, we care for our families or our friends or whatever, like try and find those commonalities, and I think soon you'll find that we're not actually that different to one another.
Thank you.
Thank you.